Storytelling is something we've all been fascinated with through the ages. It's how we transfer family information, gems, secrets, skills, and information. And our featured storyteller for today is Anita Myers. I'll tell you a little bit more about her when we come back. Don't go away. If you're just joining us, welcome to Books with Brigetti. I'm your host, Brigetti Limbanda from Cape Town in South Africa. And our stream today is made possible by StreamYard and Be Live Media. A special warm welcome if you're watching us on Amazon Live. Great to have you here. It would be nice if you have a question or two for our author. You are more than welcome to post those in the chat. Our special featured storyteller is Anita Myers. She's an emotional intelligence strategist and the founder of Innerscope 365. Her work is dedicated to redefining wellness through the engagement of emotional intelligence. We're going to be talking about her books today: Hearts Do Matter, Grateful Celebrations, and The Undercover Superhero. She wrote Hearts Do Matter because the pandemic's been difficult for all of us, but more so for the little people in our lives. Let's not waste any time. I'm going to get Anita to join us on the show. Anita, it is awesome to have you join me today. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
agreeing to chat to us. Um, for those who don't know you, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what was it that made you want to become an author? I mean, was it a conscious decision to become an author, or did that just kind of happen or was it by design?
I guess it could be all three. I mean, it was in all honesty, it just kind of evolved. I didn't even know that I could write, let alone share information. It was something that I developed over time, basically through, I would say in college, I had learned about the importance of giving that feeling across through writing and why it's so important. And I wasn't even a reader when I was a kid, but
Wow.
I took on how the film industry, you know, I always used to watch movies and television shows and programs. And, you know, over the years, I had learned about what is the importance of telling a story, you know, to be able to paint the picture of how somebody feels. And so when it came down to, I mean, I still, I still kind of pinch myself that this happened. You know, I made a decision. I knew that I wanted to tell the story at one point, that I really want people to know this, not because I want to share, look what awful things happened to me and look what I did. It was more, you know, I thought about others. When I started, as I got older, I started looking at the kids, the teenagers, the young adults, you know, the adults. And then as I'm working with people, I would notice that age within, like, let's say if I'm talking to someone who's in their 30s or 40s, I could still see the 16-year-old who was hurt. I could still see the 5-year-old who just wanted to feel valued. And so over the time, I was influenced to write actually through social media. when I
Oh,
got on,
wow.
when I think about it, when I got on social media, I was in a place where I was pretty much alone, meaning, we all have our moments and spurts where we're along with friends and we're doing a lot of things, and then we're working, and whatever the case was, I was in a place where I had my daughter, and my husband and I were just trying to make ends meet, and social media showed up when it did, and I was totally hesitant, and I got on and I started to share. There was Twitter, but then there was Facebook. And when Facebook came around, it was about, you could share whatever you want to share, and there really wasn't a limit in
Right.
how many words you could use. So when my influence was my daughter, when I would look at something that she would do and I'd observe it, I didn't have my mom to tell, I didn't have my father to tell, and I really didn't have any family at all to tell. So I one day decided to share just the way I would share if I could tell my mom, this is what happened, I noticed this about my daughter, and this is what she did, and this is what it made me feel like. And I shared it just really from my heart to the page. And over time, I saw the responses where I didn't expect it. I just said it for myself to share it with others in hopes that someone would appreciate my love for my kiddo. And when I did it, the people that responded back, men and women of any age, that was there, would really admire what I had said, or they might say, I felt like I was right there with you. Or they would say, it makes me want to be a better mom, or I can't wait to be a mother. Like those kinds of really heavy responses
It
really.
was relatable. What you were sharing was sort of heart to heart stuff that other people could that resonated with them.
Right. And I didn't know. And one thing led to another where I was given the opportunity to, uh, I spoke with my then she was someone that I hired to be my publisher. And she's now a very, very dear friend of mine, Dolly Cortez. And she has her company, Rose Gold Publishing. And what I had hired her to do was look at a separate project. And in that separate project, as she's talking to me through the phone, she had said, Anita, I'd like to have you start new. And I just remembered thinking, look, I just want to do what I want to do. But I was very patient with her. I was very open to listen to what she had to say. I'm always open about what people feel. And when she shared, I think you have your own thing to do right now. I had done a project with someone else in the past. And she says, I think you should do your own thing. And I think you should start with the most difficult thing that was in the previous project. Let's make this into a book and start there. And that was where I
Wow.
began. Yeah. And when I started writing, I hit a writer's block for a little bit, just because when you are finally giving yourself permission to share certain things that you hid in caves of your heart, it's a little uncomfortable to just suddenly say, I'm going to expose this. I'm going to tell this story. But the more and more I would see teenagers and children, teenagers, young adults, and adults, and I see the outcome of not knowing, it made me feel compelled to continue writing. And it all really, within 30 days, everything just kind of boom. It's almost as if the moment I did the first chapter, the rest just followed really easily. And it still astounds me, the
How did you
reaction.
bridge that? How did you bridge that gap of wanting to share something to help other people, um, and overcoming your own vulnerability? I always find that's kind of a fascinating thing for me to ask people. How did you overcome your own sort of sense of vulnerability? It's like going on camera these days. We kind of crazy scared of the idea of being on camera, and um, a book is kind of like the camera to your soul when you're sharing stories that are deeply personal.
Yeah, that's well said. That's very well said. I would say that, in a quick answer, when you are when you get to a crossroad in real life or figuratively, and you sit there and you hem and haw over which direction you want to go, eventually you have to get to a point to make a decision. And in terms of, when I decided to finally be more vulnerable and share that vulnerability, expose that underside of my heart, I got to that point where I'm like, you know what? you only live once, all the different words that we've, said to ourselves in the past. I just kind of got to a point where, I'm not going to worry about anyone's opinion anymore, because I used to be somebody that, their validation was important to me. And I think that I've done so much work in growing into the kind of woman that I am today, that when I got to the point of writing this book, it was, what, I'm writing this book and I'm sharing it because I think my value in seeing teenagers, young adults, and adults recover was so much stronger than how anybody was going to feel affected by what I said. And that's where I finally said, I'm doing this. I have to do this. It needs to be done. I was tired of seeing the things I was seeing on the news, hearing the things I was hearing among my friends, discovering what people are going through. And, there's poor parenting out there. There's poor adulting out there. There's poor teenagers that don't even know what direction to go to. And then we had the pandemic. So, it really felt like a passionate, it was a passion project to make sure that we could see our future generations and even our current generation transform from wherever they are right now to wherever they can potentially be, filled with really positive, optimistic, love-filled power.
So I love the title of the book, Hearts Do Matter. How did you come up with that title?
Well, because I have a creative I have a creative imagination, but with words are very important to me. And I grew up hearing how everything else mattered. Basically, everything else mattered. Your reputation, your status. You don't laugh like this, you don't do this, you have to sit like this, you have to act like this. That mattered. They mattered. Their opinion mattered. And all of that for so much of my life, from so many different avenues. And when I got to where I did with that book specifically, um, I'll explain that Hearts Do Matter is a book that's designed to help people overcome grief when loss takes place. And it was created because I lost my mother. My mom fell ill to Alzheimer's, and it was a really tough experience to have to witness everyone that has lost anyone who you loved. If you love them very much, the loss feels very heavy. And there was a lot of grief, and it did take some time for me to overcome that. But in seeing the things that I saw after my mother passed, there was a message that I had. I would say maybe the way of saying it is, maybe I prayed for it, or I spoke to my mom within my heart to communicate to me. Once I had learned the news that she passed, I was so desperate to know that she was okay. Like most people want to know if they're okay. And to make a very beautiful, but yeah, a little bit longer story short, her reaction was showing me the heart at a time where I would not have expected it. And when I had seen the image of the heart, the human in me is like, no. But the spirit in me was like, yeah, absolutely, yes. Absolutely, yes. So as I started thinking about my mom through the years since she passed, through the months, through the weeks, uh, this symbol kept showing up in so many ways, the way, and it wasn't like a heart-shaped cookie and that's my mom's reaching out to me. It was really about the way the shadows of the light, the way the light appeared, the way a droplet of something appeared, the way it naturally came to me, uh, that I would never have noticed before. And it still happens today. And it happens through even my friends and my followers on Facebook that notice these things. They reach out to me. And so when I had seen that, the imagery of my mom telling me in so many ways, I'm still here, I still exist, and I love you. I embraced that more than embracing the loss. And that's what helped me change and overcome that feeling of emptiness when you don't get to have that physical person that you care about so much. And I thought, out of everything that matters in this world, I believe that hearts do matter.
You know, my heart's felt heavy this past week for friends of ours who almost almost 30 years ago they lost their son, um, in a tragic car accident. He was on his motorbike, his bicycle, and the sort of earphones were just sort of coming out then. It was just becoming a thing to be able to wear earphones,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
he had them in his ears and he couldn't hear the car, and he was fatally injured in that car accident,
Oh my.
and they had a daughter, and just recently they all had COVID. And I think it was literally as much as just 3 days after she was tested positive, she succumbed. Um, and all I was thinking this last week is how broken they feel about this massive loss. Um, and so, just listening to you talking about hearts do matter, I couldn't help but think of them and how their hearts are filled and just so overcome with grief at the moment. Um, and I think the story that you tell in the book is important because sometimes we forget that we want to allow people the space, and children as well. We want to allow them the space and the time to grieve. And so sometimes we say things like, I know how you feel, when in truth we actually don't know,
No.
because everybody's got their own feelings. Your relationship with the person who died is going to impact how you feel about that loss. There's so many different things. So we can never truly say, I know how you feel. I really have a problem with that statement because each person's feelings are unique to them. And sometimes we rush to relate our own experiences, and we forget that that person needs the time and space to talk, to deal with how they feel. It's not about us right
Right.
now, it's about them and their feelings. Do you deal with any of that sort of thing in Hearts Do Matter?
When it comes to Hearts Do Matter, it is designed, even though I know it looks like it would just be a children's book, I kind of thought of the author, Dr. Seuss books, you can share simple messages, and those simple messages are really what most humans need. It doesn't matter what age you
Mm.
are. I can go back at this
It's
age.
the little things, right? It's the little
Yeah,
things.
I
It
can
doesn't
go
have to be
back to
big
that
things.
age. Like even right now where I'm at in my 40s, to go back and look at the Dr. Seuss books. I used to classify those as children's books when I was a kid until, when you become a mother or you decide to pick it up for any reason and you actually read it. And these simple words say so much. And they resonate very brilliantly within how we want to act in our lives. So when I created Hearts Do Matter, it was kind of an homage to be able to offer that type of idea of, making it an illustrated book. Let it attract children. I would love to see, elementary teachers share this. I'd love to see parents share this, but I'd also love to see adults just read it because it's so simple and it speaks to the child in your heart. And I would say that, it tells the story of me as a little girl and my relationship with my mother. And, it shows where love was. And that might help people see where love still is today, even if there is no loss, to be able to read it and see the connection. And it could be you and your teacher, you and your spouse, you and your child, it could be anybody.
Any
But
relationship, yeah.
look at the relationship for what it is and see where the love resides when you're alive with them. For me, I shared where it was, and then I also shared where it still exists and how there is beauty in love that still exists, even if someone has crossed over to the better land.
Can you share is there a favorite part in the book that you could share with us?
Every part of the book is my favorite part, but I do have a part for you. Let me see if I can get to it real quick. I have my book here, of course. This was a tough one to read out loud because it's not a fabricated fiction book. It is, it's really the truth of what happened with me. But so I'll show the images in just a moment, but the words go like this. One day, as they went walking down a sidewalk that they knew, the daughter said, "Hey, Ma, Do you know how I love you? Her mother said, No, my dear. How does my child love me? I love you with all my heart, said the girl, the same way you love me. School began. She hugged her girl and said, Listen, my sweet child, go and study, find a buddy, laugh, play, and smile. Her daughter returned day after day, sad about those who weren't nice. She sat by her mother, placed her head on her lap, and asked her for some advice. Honey, her mom shared, this world is filled with people who learned love wrong. They don't always know so much about that, but love is where you are strong. Forgive them for the way they hurt you. Their minds fill with so much chatter. Remember the secret that you and I know. It's hearts that really do matter. And there's a little
That,
image of me and my
oh,
mom.
I'm going to let me put you full screen so you can show that image.
There you go. That's me and my mom.
That is so gorgeous. That is
Oh,
so gorgeous. Oh my goodness.
I'll
Um,
take you back to the other illustrations. So you can see the illustrations were by Yuri Borgen, phenomenal illustrator. Took my actual school, and this is me and my
oh
mom
wow. That's
when we were just
gorgeous.
kids. And let me see if I can go right there. There's the good one. She took images of my pictures of the times I spent with my mom, and she brought them to life. And it was really a beautiful synergy that I had with her. She's a fantastic illustrator. I highly recommend her. And of course, Dolly Cortez helping me with making this happen through Rose Gold Publishing. But yeah, the story was a lovely one to share.
That is absolutely amazing. And your illustrator is fantastic. It just captures the essence of what you um, are wanting to convey. So how did Hearts to Matter then lead into grateful celebrations?
Yes,
I imagine this is sort of all about, perspectives and things.
Grateful Celebrations is a companion journal. It's designed to
Okay.
help you navigate through your emotions when you are experiencing loss and tribute the person that you're with. So when I think about loss itself, you love somebody so much, and now something takes place and they're no longer here physically. There's so much involvement of our emotions first naturally. We have to grieve loss, and there are ways to process it, and everybody processes loss differently. Some of us
Mm,
go into our cave and we just need to be able to just be there. Others just keep working on like everything's fine, and then there's everything in between. So my hope is to be able to bring people's emotions to a grateful setting where they can process their emotions in more of a grateful way, to be able to write out their feelings, whether they handwrite it, and I've given them pages and prompts to kind of start the process of what do I want to say, how do I want to feel, and only when they're ready, I think they should go ahead and give this a try. Whether they want to write in this specific journal on their own or write separately, the point is to be able to take in the questions that are asked in there and reflect and allow yourself. You might bawl, you might cry your eyes out just in starting to write, and that's okay. You should. And I think that we have a lot of people in this world that are told to suck it up and deal with it, and lots of phrases that are shared that are not healing words to really build your wellness. This is part of life. Everyone's going to experience loss in some way. And
You
if you
know,
have
I
something, you should tribute them.
I often hear people say, when someone dies, people will say to the people left behind, be strong. And I often ask people, why? Why do you have to be strong? For what? To do what? You know, are you not allowed to feel sad? Are you not allowed to break down and just mourn for the loss that you've experienced? Why do you have to pretend that you are okay when you're really not?
Right. And
Because
you know,
all
I
that emotion's got to go somewhere.
right. And I'll tell you, Brigetti, that I think a lot of this is misunderstandings about how people must grieve. I think that there's people that mean well underneath their words. They do mean well. When I just lost my mom and a call comes in saying, "Are you okay?" Now, the person really wants to know if I'm okay. But because of my backstory and my journey to get to the moment that my mom passed and in the way everything happened, to hear someone say, "Are you okay?" makes me want to swear and say, what do you think? Are you expecting me to say I'm okay? Because I'm not. And that's all an emotional reaction because, you know, there's never the right words to say at the moment. So lots of times when we know something big's happened to somebody where loss is involved, just being available, your beautiful grace and just respect in the silence to just allow them to be is always a really great beginning. But after that, processing it, I don't know if people really know the words to use to be able to process properly because you got to identify your emotions on being in front of somebody who's lost somebody very important to them. And you really need to understand their emotions. And if you don't, to be able to identify where they are right now is a really good idea to say, hey, I'm here for you. And if you want to share, I'm just going to listen to you and let them process. And sometimes the first day it'll be fine. No big deal. I'm good. I'm good. I'm good. I'm good. And then all of a sudden one day, some commercial, something, the way the breeze hits you, suddenly you just fall to your knees and you miss that person. And any of it, as long as you're not hurting somebody, any of it is always okay.
Mm. I'm always fascinated how it's usually the little things that can trigger a memory or um, an emotion, you know,
Hmm.
and
Yeah,
and and I love expressing that I believe that there's no limitation on grief. You know, whether it's 2 weeks ago, 2 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, we still have our triggers um, that is going to send us into that place where we feel a little bit overcome
absolutely.
with grief, and that's okay, you know. So it's never a case of, oh, it's 20 years ago, you should feel better about it now. Life just doesn't work that way. It's we.
I actually started to read. My mom passed away in 2005. And as you've learned about me, specifically you've learned about me. I can say I'm a pretty fairly strong individual, and I know how to process my emotions pretty well at this point with all that I've done and what I teach and what I know. Um, but I still opened up that book today, knowing that I'll be talking with you, and I started to try to read something out loud. And the truth is some things still hurt. Loss hurts, and it could be forever. Grief takes its own time to heal. And the thing that I think is really beautiful is if you still feel emotional about somebody, it means that love was there,
Mm,
and I know that there's going to be people out there
yeah.
that might listen to something like this and think, well, I'm sad because so and so never loved me. So and so, and again, I'm going to say that love was still there between you and the individual that may not have the way it was, the relationship that was lost. And I can actually say that because I lost my father. And, it was a totally different relationship, completely different. But the sadness that I go through is a separate kind of a sadness of the hope I had to be able to have the kind of relationship with him like I did with my mom.
So
That was
that died with him as well.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So grieving is important, and I really, really highly emphasize that you must process your grief. When I say properly, I mean, where you can see the gratitude, you can shed the tears, and it's allowed and it's received. And if you're not around anyone who can receive it properly, you can always contact me. I'll listen. But it is important to find a way to just let it out, and hopefully, with Grateful Celebrations, having that journal, it'll allow you to do that. It'll allow you to read the prompts that are there. It'll ask you questions where it's not meant to make you feel depressed. It's meant for you to celebrate. You want to be
Mm.
grateful for the time that was spent and grateful that you get to share those memories. And this can be kind of a tribute gift about that person that you can keep in your home, one per person. If you have multiple people that you want to regard and remember and savor those, cherish those memories.
I like that, that one can actually reframe your loss to help you process it better. So instead of focusing on the loss, focusing on the celebration of what you had
Right.
together. Is there a passage you could share with us out of Grateful Celebrations?
What I can share with you, I mean, I'll share what I've written in the beginning, because the rest of it, I'll just kind of show you how the idea of the inside of it, if I can, hopefully.
Sure.
There's a lot of writing areas. There's some areas that kind of remind you of what to think. It'll ask you some questions. So not so much writing, but some kind of reflections that is a companion to Hearts Do Matter. So
Right.
when you read the book Hearts Do Matter, and then you come back to this journal, you can refer to certain things and relate it to yourself. But I'll read this to you. Let's see. Hearts Do Matter is meant to bring your heart toward the emotional landscape of gladness, thankfulness, appreciation, and love. Think about someone who you love as you go through these pages. Focus on your good memories, the memorable moments. How were you positively affected? What made you smile, giggle, or laugh? What made them unique? Here is the place to capture and celebrate your relationship, a place to celebrate their existence and pay tribute to the time you had with someone who meant so much to you.
I think that is beautiful. That is beautiful. Thanks for reading that.
Thank you.
To me, there's something special about having an author read, um, because you place the emphasis exactly where you want to do in
That's
a
right.
way that
You do.
someone else can't do it. you know.
This is the way you read it.
And I think the hardest job, for an author is when you find someone to do an audio book for you, and you kind of think, no, that's not the right word, or it's not the right kind of emphasis, or the pause isn't right, or something. I think that must be one
Yeah.
of the hardest um, things to let go for an author, is commissioning someone to do your audiobook.
Yeah, and that's funny because I'm actually working in the background. I've had so many projects, but one of the things I'm hoping to do is to work with this one individual who reached out to me, who would love to read this, turn this into an audiobook, just like you're saying. She's from Berlin, and she's got this lovely English accent that was just perfect, because if anyone knew me in my background, my life, I've got a thing for the English accent. I always have. As you can hear my accent, I'm born and raised in Chicago, Illinois. And so whenever you hear any story ever told, whether it's Disney or wherever, even if they're depicting Rome or Italy or Greece or India, they're all speaking with an English accent. So I always, if I did read a story to my daughter, I used to ask her, which accent would you like? English or
Sweet.
American? Yeah, yeah, yeah. And she would always say, "Read it to me in an English accent," And I just, so when I had imagined in my fun little memory of creating things, like, wouldn't it be nice if this were to be read with an English accent? And sure enough, a beautiful lady came forward and asked me, and I said, "Oh my God, yes!" So that's on my plate of things to accomplish. Hopefully this year.
That is so precious. That is so precious. So I want to segue into the undercover superhero, which
Absolutely.
is slightly different from the other two books. Tell us about.
It is like so different. I love how you said that though. It's so different. Can I just show like the cover of Hearts Do Matter and
Yeah,
you book?
yes, yes,
So
yes,
so
yes.
so
Please do.
you see that this is Hearts Do Matter. This is the coloring. Okay. Now let me introduce you to the undercover superhero.
It's
I mean,
just
look at the difference, right?
it's just night and day. It
It is.
literally is night and day. Night and day.
But you're right, though. You are correct. There is a common ground. There is a common ground because obviously I'm one of them. Okay. But in the writing, it's about overcoming something. And with Hearts Do Matter, we're overcoming grief and sorrow
Yeah.
and sadness when you lose somebody and being able to see where love exists. And The Undercover Superhero is a book that I wrote it so that I can share what it's like to live in the shadows of emotional abuse and what it takes to overcome that and step out into your own powerful light. And so the common ground there is you're overcoming something and it is emotionally related. I'm an emotional intelligence trainer. So what I care about is, we can say logical things. We could hear it as we are talking about how people just talk to tell us how to calm down and stop crying and move on. And sometimes those things just don't sit well with us. So even in the case of emotional abuse, especially in the case of emotional abuse, I think with all my heart, I believe it's a silent killer. Now, there are people that, in my opinion, they go through these emotional crimes that lead to, when I say emotional murders, what I mean is the person that they are is no longer there. They just become whatever and they let the world lead their shell. Sometimes you hear people say that they're an empty shell. And it's very
Mm.
sad for me. It makes me very sad when I even try to say it because I believe that everyone has a right to live well. They're here so they can live well, but they're given circumstances. I try to look at it all as, I don't want to minimize it, but I try to look at it all as, what's the test? What's the game? How do you get through it? Um, and when you are born, you're here to thrive. You're here to grow. You're here to learn. You're here to produce. You're here to love. You're here to grow relationships. And when you're in an environment that speaks poorly of you, that that teaches you definitions by experience, just by going through it, they teach you that this is what love is because of experience and continuous commentary and reactions that really don't define what love is. By the time they get to becoming grown-ups, by the time they become parents to their next generation to go on to continue for them their legacy, what's being said? What's the underlying message? What does I love you really, really mean? So um, this book is very, very important to me. It'll probably be the most important book in my life because it's the first time that I was able to share with so much passion why it's important for you to value who you are. And if you are a teenager and you're watching this or you're told to see this interview, I implore you, I almost want to command you to get this book and read it because I'm seeing that though adults out there that have read it have said very, very wonderful things about it, I want to see the teenagers grab this. My daughter actually just read this a
What did
couple of
she
months.
think? What did she
Yeah.
think?
Can I just tell you that this is not what I had wanted her to read yet? She is a 14-year-old girl. Her maturity is older than 14, I can tell you that. But I'm still a mother. And it's one thing, I'm her mother. And what I disclose in the book is the hardships of what I've gone through in my life. And they're pretty hard. They're pretty hard. And they involve, all of it involves relationships and where relationships go really bad. From parenting that I had received to relationships that I went through from work, love interests, friendships, high school, and beyond, everything that I had experienced that was really beyond bitter tasting that led me to feeling as awful as I did, that most people can go through. A lot of teens have probably gone through that. There is a glimmer of light.
Mm.
And if I can crawl into that cave, I knew that when my daughter, I had assigned her a different book for we're homeschooling, and I had assigned her I had assigned her the book 1984. And
Okay.
it's supposed to be an eighth grade book reading. So I assigned that to her. And as she was reading it, boy, there's a lot going on the outside of the world, and there's a lot going on in that book. And she had made an executive decision, unbeknownst to me, to put that book down and pick up mine. And I had no idea until she came over to me. She obviously read certain parts of the book, and she came over to me, and the words she has learned to choose words very well. And the words she chose
She's
had
her mama's child, right?
oh, good. Well, I think she's definitely a good balance of my husband and myself for sure. But I'm really glad that she got this part from me. She was very clear, very precise, but she said to me, in short, she had said that, she had so much anger for the people that said what they said, but she had so much love for me for overcoming it. And she had said how she wanted to
That's
see,
pretty insightful for a 14-year-old.
yeah, yeah. She had said that every teenager needs to read this. It is so important because my kiddo has not experienced a lot of these things at all. To be honest, she has not. However, the world still rotates as it does, and there will be people that might enter her atmosphere that will. And so she had said to me, if teens can read this now, they will be more prepared for what's to come, and they'll have their shields and they'll have their swords in the fantasy of thought of protecting yourself and having knowledge of your value. And when I'm listening to her talk, and I had tears in my eyes because that's my kid, that's my child. After everything I've gone through, here I am married with my daughter, and this is what she says to me about it was really a very touching moment. But I still will say this is for everybody. If your heart beats and you're curious about living life well, every single person on this planet has been emotionally abused in some way by someone. And you need to know how to get past that and still stand in your own light. So,
Unfortunately, I think there's a lot more people that relate to your story than there aren't. Um,
yeah,
so it's an important story to tell. Would you be up for sharing something out of the book with us?
absolutely. Absolutely. I always keep my mark in this area here, so I'll give you a little bit. All right, here we go. I believe that everyone here is an undercover superhero with powers waiting to be revealed to use for the greater good. You have powers that may have been covered up, eclipsed, or shadowed by family members, friends, society, or experiences. Or maybe you've noticed the powers you have, but struggle in breaking through to live a more powerful life filled with considerable amount of quality and fulfillment in your day-to-day life. You don't have to struggle anymore. The door is open. Just walk through and train in everything you already have. Harness all that incredible power in your mind. Gain control of it. Know what you're working with. The universe within you and outside of you is stretching their necks, waiting to see your transformation. I've learned to elevate my level of energy, to be strong enough to make decisions that work in my favor. So much that I wanted to bring what I did and still do to the foreground to help you and others reach greater pinnacles in life. Aren't you worth it?
That is so powerful. That is pretty powerful. That is pretty powerful. I really like that. How long did it take you to write the undercover superhero?
Rigetti, I couldn't believe it. Okay. I thought this was going to take me like a year or so or more. And my publisher, Dali Cortez, gave me the assignment of taking a very vulnerable part in a project, a writing project that I had done in the past, and said, you're going to start your first chapter in the new book with that. And I remembered when she said that to me, like how, it was a very, very vulnerable time in my life. And so when I put that together, I did the first chapter. But the moment that it happened was incredible. It's so funny because you don't expect yourself to keep going. You just think you're going to just put that in and you're going to rewrite a little bit, and then your brain's going to just block again. And my brain had blocked in putting this in. And once I did, it took about 30 days and I was done.
Oh my gosh.
I had a deadline. I had a deadline of getting this done. Now, mind you, I'll tell you this, okay? When I met her and we started to work on this project of this, doing my very first book, it was October of 2018. And she said, okay, begin. Okay. And I had writer's block. Like I didn't even know where to go, because I think what was going on with me was, the things that were happening in my current life, work and the pressures of different things took place. And all I needed to do was go into my other project, get that bit that she wanted me to put as the first chapter. And in my thinking, if you're not a writer and you want to be a writer, you think, especially someone like me, I think it has to be in order. Like I have to start with this, and then it has to be this. It has to be chapter 1, then chapter 2, then chapter 3. And what happened was I started writing in May. I couldn't write October onwards. I had all of these things going on, but it was May when I sat down and I finally said, okay, I'm going to do this, because this was due in May. And how am I going to I really was thinking that I wasn't going to get this project done. But I talked to her and she understood, and she said, I'm going to I'm going to give you a little stretch, but you're going to get it done. She was real good with me. Thank God for Dolly. And so I
You've got to
started
kind of
writing
get
it.
out of your own head. That's why you need
Right.
somebody to kind of guide you
Yeah.
through the process, just to help you break through that mental block that you may have.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's just a little thing, it's not a big thing, but
It was incredible.
it's
And
just a little thing
all I
to,
had to do was write it. Like all I had to do was just get that part in there. And once I did, like I said, I was done in June and we were ready to go. And it felt right. Like everything flowed out of me. And that's when I have a lot of experiences in my life where I'm going to call them, people say your gut feeling. I call
yeah,
it God feeling for me. I felt God within me. That's like I opened the door that He had already unlocked, and all I needed to do was just walk through it. And the moment I walked through it through typing, it just all naturally came out. And I remember when I shared with Dolly, she was like, "Oh my gosh!" So I felt really good about it. And I think the best part of it all, though, was once it was done and all the vulnerability was out. Mind you, I had tears through the whole thing, through the hardships, through remembering things, and where it took me. And then I had the tears of success and victory that showed me that I was absolutely an undercover superhero. And I couldn't wait for other people
to
to
read it.
notice that they are too.
Yeah, that is phenomenal. Um, because I think our natural inclination is um, to move towards the dark side of life.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, but to have that guiding light is just phenomenal, and to get to the point where you can turn around that belief that you had about yourself, and very more often than not it's a skewed belief that you've made up in your head about yourself, and none of it is really true. In most cases, we think so poorly of ourselves and our capabilities, until we learn to step into our own, um, and then it just propels us forward. And sometimes we just need a little bit of a help to help us do that.
You know what I've recognized in my career? I've been working in training and educating for almost, gosh, well, longer than that, but in my business itself for almost 11 years. And the one thing I've noticed, it doesn't even matter how scholarly and erudite, how rich or how poor or whatever the dynamic is that would separate one from another, okay? It always boils down to validation and
Mm,
support. When you don't have validation, when you don't have support, you can be lost. You don't have the navigation tools to move forward. And then you're stumbling through life and figuring it out on your own. And that can certainly be done. But if the world knew how to speak to one another, it's always talked about speaking peace. All the people that move forward talking about, how we want to talk to one another, how we want peace for one another. There are ways to do it. And if you can't get it from out there, you should always get it from within you. You have to be your greatest fan, not your worst enemy. So I know that as I was growing up, as I share in the book, growing up, recognizing every walk of life that was around me, my eyes were used to look at everything outside of me. My ears were designed so I could hear what they say about me. And I wasn't given a lot of good on any of those things. And so it made me naturally make poor decisions. I wouldn't know that they're poor decisions. I would think that this is the right way to go. This is the way that they told me. This is the way that it's supposed to be. This is how we handle problems. So when if you're someone who engages in fights all the time, however you want to look at it, and your children are listening, they learn this is how you fight. This is how you handle conflict. That's what parents don't always recognize that they're doing. And that's what, even managers of companies, the messages that they're giving that are unwritten make what the company is, make the turnover rate much higher than it needs to be. So, I think that when I look at what I've shared in the book, it really boils down to you. I have parents come to me to work with their children, their teenagers. But in the end, I look at the parents too. And when the parents recognize where they could help their child, because they love their child so much, but they realize that it's all about the emotional element, the emotional landscape that they're living in, and how that trickles down to how a child will make a decision at that point when they hit their crossroads. So I'm very happy that I was able to get this out, and I see that the results show people feel really that someone's relating to them in a really good way. And I kind of feel like a miner that goes down into a cave saying, "You're safe. Follow me. I'll get you out. Here's the way out." So people can learn some things based on how they can relate to what I've said, and know that there's a way out so that they can stand on their own.
Well, the world certainly can be a minefield, isn't it? And feel like you're walking through a cave, and especially with the advent of the pandemic,
Yeah.
um, you know, we all need a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel, and and some help to channel our emotions and make us better people, help us cope better with life out there. Anita, thank you so much. It was amazing chatting to you today. So I want to say thank you for your time.
Thank you.
This
It was a
was
lot of fun.
this
Thank you
was
for giving me the time to be with you.
this was absolutely fabulous. So thank you so much, and I'd love to have you back again sometime. And if you're watching this, these books are all three available on Amazon. They're in the carousel. So yeah, I'm going to put you on full screen. Can you hold up the books again just one more time?
Sure. Okay. Well, there's this.
That's the
Boop-a-doo.
undercover superhero,
And
right?
then there, yes, absolutely, yes. And
And then
here,
there's Heart to Matter and Grateful Celebration. So those two, you recommend that people get those two as a pair together
I
because they're
do.
companion books, right? Yeah.
Yes, and if let's say you're watching this and you're thinking, well, nothing's happened to me, so I don't need it. I'm going to tell you that there's someone that you know that could really use this. It's a nice gift. It's a gift. It doesn't matter if it's Christmas, birthday, what have you. If you know that someone has lost someone very important to them, it's a gift to give love this way so that they can see how love still exists even if someone has left. I feel like when loss takes place, it's a tremendous uh, there's a lot of negative feelings that go through. And once they're done processing however they need to, and they want to come up for air to start, processing it in a more positive, optimistic way, to continue living on, even in their name. Even like for me, when I do the things I do for me, but I also know that my family, my parents are, they're remembered all along the way with my behavior, my manners, my reactions to things, my decisions of projects that I'm doing. So, I really, really believe that I, there's so many people that don't process their sadness properly. And if you have sadness from loss, then at least give this a try. Read the book and enjoy the journey that I had to go through and see what came of it. I've learned from people who have read this book. Now, the heart was my symbol between me and my mother. But I have known of people that have read this book that have said, oh, mine is a dime, or mine is a feather, or mine is a flower. They have symbols. They received something that tells them that as they're walking around in life today, that when they see this specific connection, that they now know that they're okay and they still love them and that hearts matter. And even though for mine it's about the symbol of the heart, I do want people to realize that whatever the symbol is, hearts matter. Love is there. Love still exists, and they should take the opportunity to see what I mean through reading the book and trying out the journal. I'd love to hear from them if they can complete the journal, and I might have something as a little gift to say thank you if they wrote to me and told me about it.
That is amazing. Anita, thank you so much. Thank you, everyone who's joined us live today. It was great having you join us. Anita, take care.